Hey there, and welcome to the Parallax Headshot Section 5. In this section, we're going to be creating a red glowing laser helmet around our subject. Basically, our idea on how he could breathe in space. He's got like a force field around his head. It's going to be really cool. Let's go ahead and create a new layer. I'm going to hit Command G to group that with itself. And on this layer, I'm just going to do a real quick sketch. Basically, get the idea of like what we want from our image here. So with our red brush, basically just like creating a sketch right around here. There we go, something like that. There we go. That kind of comes up and around there. Alright, so that's a really incredible sketch of about what we want. And now it's our time to make it into a reality. Alright, well, let's go ahead and just delete everything off that layer. We're going to do it with really simple tools. We're going to use the marquee tool, the marquee selection tool. So let's grab a elliptical marquee, and we're going to start off by creating a nice large elliptical marquee, something like that. Looks pretty good. Alright, we're going to go to our foreground color here, and I'm just going to choose a nice bright red color. Looks pretty good. Alright, now we're going to hit Shift Delete on our keyboard and we're going to fill this with our foreground color. So it says, what do we want to fill it with? We want to fill it with our foreground color, and let's hit OK. Cool. So basically we just have a red ellipse now. Now we're going to contract this a little bit because I just want there to be like a very thin line. So we're going to go to Select, Modify, and Contract by 5 pixels. Hit OK, and then hit the Delete key. Alright, now we're going to deselect. Very cool. So basically what we're going to do, I'm going to hit Command T, and we're just going to start transforming this around to form this helmet that we want. We're going to hold the Control or Command key on any of these points, and that's going to allow us to kind of like shift and move this this ellipse around. Now, just because I know I'm going to create 3 sides, the left side, the bottom, and the top, I'm going to go ahead and create a copy of this so I can come back to it if I need. Alright. Let's go ahead and hit Command T, and we're going to rotate this around. We're going to start off with the top. Kind of bring it in there. And there we go. That looks pretty good there. Now let's put a layer mask on there, and I'm just going to use a large soft edge brush to paint black on my layer mask. There we go. And I'm going to kind of let this like fade away nice and naturally. There we go, to give it a little bit of that like cool like laser type of effect. Alright, that looks good. Now we're going to make a couple duplicates of this. I'm going to hit Command J. Let's move this down, and then Command T will bring our transform point right about there, and then kind of scale that down, and let's bring that out a little bit. So basically we've got like the same shape here that we're just going to duplicate a couple times. And this is what's forming like our array of like lasers or whatever. Okay, Command T again for transform. And then if you see this little guy right here in the center, this is our control point. You can click and move that anywhere, and then you'll basically rotate right around wherever you move it to. So in this case, we're going to move it right about there. There we go. And hit Enter. Alright, let's do the same thing again. We're going to bring this down. Command T, bring it right over there, and then alright, there we go. So that's a nice start to our laser helmet right there. We've got the top of it going on, and it's not complete right now, but that's a good start. Cool. So what we're going to do is I'm going to hit Command G to group all of those layers together now. Alright. And let's go ahead and duplicate that entire group and see if we can use this for any other part of our helmet. So let's hit Command J, and then we're going to transform again using Command T. Let's try bringing this out and around there. I feel like this might work out pretty well. Now, this is a case where like this might work pretty well, except it doesn't reach far enough. So we're going to hold the Control or the Command key and grab this little point here, and just kind of pull it out and down and around there. Alright, very cool. And simply by using these control keys, I'm able to kind of change the shape of this overall group. Alright. Very cool. This is looking really good. Alright, and let's just stretch that on down a little bit more. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's hit enter, and we're going to go ahead and apply that. Alright, that does look cool. Now, this one doesn't quite match, so I'm just going to like bring that in just a little bit. There we go. And let's try duplicating it. Command J again to duplicate that. Command T. And now this time, I'm going to go in and I'm going to space these a little bit closer to one another. So let's hit Command T to kind of like squish them up a little bit. There we go. Looking good. And now we're going to move these a little bit closer to one another. So we'll start off with this one. Bring it in. Bring that guy in. And then this one. Cool. So you can see we're basically starting off with a very simple shape that we created from an elliptical marquee. And now we're creating a force field helmet from it, which is pretty cool. Alright. You know what? I'm going to try this flip the other way. We're going to hit Command T, right click, and say flip vertical, just to see if maybe we like that a little bit better. Yeah, I like that a little better. Alright, we'll bring that down. And then this bottom one here, we're going to do the same thing with that one there. Command T, let's just stretch that out a little bit more. Alright, because I want it to kind of connect down there. Alright, you know what? I might hit Command T on this. We'll try flipping this horizontally and bringing this up and around there. Alright, and you can change the shape of just about anything in Photoshop by holding the Control or the Command key and grabbing on any of those corners there. Alright, cool. I think that looks pretty good. So now what we're going to do, let's go ahead and zoom out and see if like that is actually the shape that we want. So this is in, all of those are in one group, right? So I can do the same thing with the group that I did with each of these layers. We can hit Command T, and then I can stretch and transform and warp the entire group just like I did each individual layer, which gives me a ton of control whenever I'm creating a shape like this. Alright. Cool. I like that quite a bit. Alright, looking good. So let's hit enter there again. Alright, now we have basically what started off as one set of lines that we've duplicated multiple times, and now we've got these kind of shapes that kind of collide together to form this helmet here. Now in this case we have 3 different groups, each of which has a lot of layers inside of them. Now what I'm going to do is group all of those, Command G to do that, okay? And now I'm going to duplicate that entire group. So we're all just like, look, it's a group, and then in that group we have a bunch of layers. We have a ton of stuff going on. Now, group 4 and group 4 copy are the same exact thing. Now what I'm going to do with group 4 copy is I'm just going to merge that into one layer. Because I don't need all these like groups and layers and all that stuff. It's just getting way too complicated. I'm fine if all this stuff is on one layer for now. So on the group 4 copy, we're going to hit Control or Command E to merge that with itself. Alright, so we have one layer now that contains all this, which is what we want. Now, the reason I created a duplicate of the group 4 is because, well, let's say I did want to go in there in the future and like change some of these things around. It'd be a pain to do. I really couldn't do it because they're all on one layer now. So I use this as a backup. Let's say like, oh, this doesn't work out for me. Instead of having to recreate the whole thing, I would just delete this layer and then go back in here and change one of the groups inside of it. But we're going to keep this invisible, and hopefully we don't need to go back to it, but just in case, I like to have that as a backup. Alright, cool. So that layer looks great. Now the next thing we're going to do is duplicate that a couple more times, and we're going to really lower our opacity. So I'm going to hit V for our move tool, and then the number 2 on my keyboard. And that's going to bring our opacity of the layer down to 20%. So let's just bring it in there and see what we got. You can see 20% opacity. There we go. Let's duplicate this again. Another 20% opacity. Alright, and again. The reason we're doing this here is just for a lot of variation. We want it to look like this, kind of like a force field type of thing around our character here. Alright, this is looking good. Now, all of these layers, this layer and the 3 layers that are a little bit less visible, we want to go ahead and change the blending mode of those. Alright, we're going to try overlay to start. That doesn't look so great. We'll try screen. Yeah, I kind of like screen. It looks like lasers, especially when it interacts with the other areas in the image. So definitely on the right track there. Yeah, I kind of like that. That looks good. Very nice. Now we have these like really cool laser shapes and things like that. I also want to add some blurs to our shape. So we have that like glowing laser effect. So we have this guy here, which is basically everything from group 4 combined into one. So now let's duplicate that again, and we're going to go to filter, blur, and to Gaussian blur. Alright, that looks good. Let's just turn that off and on, and we're going to duplicate that again. We're creating light effects, and anytime you do that, it's like a ton of different layers, but you can see these blurs, especially like up there, it really is starting to come together. Without those blurs, it started off just like that, and it's pretty simple. It doesn't look like bad or anything, but with all these layers added to it, it really does start to give a lot of extra glow and a lot of extra effect to the image, which is exactly what we want. So let's go ahead and group all those. Alright, so you can see out of one selection we were able to create a crazy complex shape that has a ton of detail. Now that entire group, you know what, you guessed it, I'm going to duplicate the entire group and hit Command E to merge it together. So now we have this in one group, and we can play around with this. Let's hit V for our move key, and then I'm going to hit Shift, there we go, and scroll down to my different layers. So we have our lighten blend mode now, and I'm going to give this a blur as well. So we'll go to our Gaussian blur. Alright, so this is basically just like a nice big blur that we can choose anywhere we want to use. Okay, we don't have to use it over top of the entire thing. Alright, let's hit Command J again. So now we super have this blur. It's looking really cool. Let's go ahead and group those together. And then I'm going to put a black layer mask on this by holding Alt or Option and clicking on my layer mask button. Cool. Now, with my white paintbrush, I can kind of just paint wherever I want this blur to show up. A little bit up there, a little bit down there. Pretty cool. Alright, there we go. Again, wherever we want it to show up. And it's all within this group here. Alright, so if I want to move this group, which I still think I may want to do that, I can still move everything together. So again, out of one basically marquee selection tool, we're able to create this like really cool shape that, you know, in this case kind of says, you know, tells the story of this guy being able to like breathe in space basically. Alright, that looks pretty killer. Now let's go ahead and zoom in here. I do want to paint this black. This is, we use like a welder's helmet here, if you hadn't noticed already. And the some of the details just like kind of give it away. So let's make these invisible. We're going to create a new layer. Just paint with my brush tool, make it black, and kind of just paint over this. Here we go. Cool. And then bring those back. Just a little detail in there that kind of looks better covered up. All right, cool. That looks really, really good. All right, and then I was looking at this and I saw our shape here that we had for our like glowing helmet here. And this guy, I thought maybe if we wanted to change the color, we could change the color of this entire group. Remember how we created this from multiple different layers? We could change the color of that entire group by going to our adjustment layers, going to hue saturation, and then clipping the hue saturation layer to this group by right clicking, and then we're going to go down to create clipping mask. Now when you have a clipping mask, basically this hue saturation layer is only going to affect this group now. So I can change the color, you can see, of that entire group with one hue saturation layer. Alright, which just gives me like a ton of options here. Let's just bring that over to the right, maybe something like that. And I can do the same thing with my helmet here if I want to. Let's grab a hue saturation adjustment layer. Okay, right click and go to create a clipping mask. And now I'm able to adjust the color of that entire group very, very easily to really anything I want. And in this case, because we are doing like, you know, lasers and glows and stuff like that, really any color you want is the right color. There is no wrong color in this. Alright, I think that looks pretty cool. And you know what, I'm going to delete this layer because I actually did like it how it was already. Just want to show you guys you can change these things as you want. Alright, now I'm going to put a layer mask on there. We're going to grab our brush tool, and this time we're going to create a very large soft edge brush, and I'm just going to paint some black on here, just like over a couple of these areas on my laser helmet here, just to add a little bit more variability, because it is supposed to be like, you know, semi-transparent or whatever. There we go. So just painting black on my layer mask in a couple areas helps to kind of like make it look a little more realistic. Alright, cool. Yeah, let's make that a little bit bigger. Alright, and we made that little black thing inside of the layer mask, so we're just going to move that to cover it up. Alright, and clicking on my layer mask, we're just going to paint white again in a couple more places just to bring back some detail there. Cool. That looks really good. Alright guys, and that's the end of this section. So our red laser helmet, let's just type red laser helmet. Keeps our guy able to breathe in space. Alright, super cool guys. Thanks so much, we'll see you in the next section.